G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of the Purple Coloured Glasses. In this episode I'll be going through how I went with my tips for round 17 and Freo's epic win over the Saints. Alright, let's dive into it. So first up, Geelong against Melbourne. I thought Melbourne had some pretty decent history here. They won after the siren last year. They beat up Geelong in a final, albeit Geelong had some illness in that game. But I thought at home, Geelong have been travelling fairly well. They're on a pretty good winning streak at the moment. They've now made it 7 in a row. They had some easier opponents in that stretch, but they put them to the sword as you'd expect. And I just thought their form was a lot better as well. This time last year, Melbourne were a bit patchy. They, I think, went 3-3. And they weren't super convincing in their last outing. So I went for the Cats on this one. I was pretty happy with what I saw. The concerning thing for Melbourne is their midfield sort of got beat up a bit. I think bringing Gawn and Jackson in together off a break, they looked a bit underdone at times. Stanley and Blitzarves really ran off them and made a lot. And yeah, the Cats mids just looked a lot hungrier. But this game could be played again in the final series and could be a much different result if Melbourne come back into form. But Melbourne need to find some form quickly. There's no guarantee they just suddenly put it all back together. Their forward half looks shocking. And if they're not careful, they might slip down the ladder. I think that game between Melbourne and Fremantle in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks I think it is, could go a long way to sort of deciding who's travelling where in the first round of the finals. So well done to Geelong, and if they'd kicked straight, it probably would have been a much bigger margin. Then Sydney up against the Dogs. I tipped Sydney in this one. I thought it was a real coin flip game, but after quarter time, it was pretty much game over. Like Sydney were just walking all over the Bulldogs. And I don't know if it's just the Dogs have been a bit beat up over the year. Like their midfield have had to do so much work for the sort of lack of backline they've got. And when outside of Norton, they haven't really had a great target up forward. So I think they've had to do a lot of two-way running all year, and it's really just starting to fall apart for them. They can't maintain that intensity. It looks like they've spent all their petrol tickets. So I don't know if they can sort of regroup and get back together for the last couple of weeks and just have a final throw at the stumps. A few teams above them all lost, so they're technically still in the hunt to make the top 8, but they look like one of the least convincing sides. Port Adelaide and Gold Coast are looking more likely than them at the moment. Sydney, another solid win for them at home. They're up against Freo next week, so that'll be a good game. Looking forward to playing the Swans, and it'll probably be a very tough game. Pies against North Melbourne. Didn't watch this game. I was at a wedding on the Saturday, so I didn't watch any of these. Sort of caught bits and pieces of them. Just checking the scores. But I did see North were up by 28 points, and I thought, oh, you beauty, I'm going to get this tip wrong. But wouldn't be that upset if Collingwood lose because they're putting a lot of pressure on the top 4 spots. Just be nice if there was a couple of games buffer put there. But they came from behind and won this game. I think that's 7 in a row for the Pies as well. So I think I've seen a few people sort of saying they've dealt with the top teams and struggled against the bottom teams. So I think they beat Melbourne and Freo quite easily. But North, Gold Coast aren't really a bottom team, I suppose. Adelaide, I think they played as well. And GWS, I think we're all very close margins, like single figure margins. So their run's meant to get easier from here, where they're playing teams outside the 8. So maybe that's actually they're danger games for them. And they did look a bit, just in the bits and pieces I saw from like footage and highlights and stuff, they did seem not as maniacal as I've seen them in other games this year. So you know what they say at this time of year, just a heavy training block, or it's very hard to just play at a very high consistent level week in, week out for the whole year. So just a bit of a flat spot, and the thing they'll be happy about is they got the win in this game. Gold Coast against the Tigers. So I saw the Tigers were winning massively, and I went, damn, lost a tip on this one. And I didn't actually know the end result. So I deliberately didn't look at the results because I wanted to rewatch the Freo game. And when I started watching the Freo game, it was like the last minute of the Gold Coast game, They're going inside 50. The mark spilled by Grimes, picked up, marked, and then centered, so they can have a kick after the siren, and he slots. And I was like, oh, this is beautiful. So I got that one right as well. It's a pretty good win for the Gold Coast to be about 40 odd points down and to come back, win it after the siren. That's a really emotionally lifting win. And I think sometimes GWS and Gold Coast can be accused of not really having a lot of history and it's all fake, that sort of stuff. And these are the types of games that help you build your history. I think about Freo, we had like the Siren Gate game, like Justin Longmuir kick after the siren. Like these games like live on in your folklore, and they may not even play finals this year, but these are the sorts of games that help build a bit of history around the club. And yeah, it's great to see them knock off the Tigers. Tigers have given up a lot of leads this year, and I did sort of call that out a few weeks ago, and I thought they were safe in this one. Like, I thought they were home and hosed, but apparently there's not a lead big enough for them to be able to lose from. It's in the Saints-Freo game, so I hadn't watched this. I didn't know what the result was. I've watched it recorded. I've avoided spoilers. And we looked really flat. Just around the centre. I guess our overall play wasn't flat. It was like our intensity around the centre bounces was really strong from St Kilda. So it looked like Ryder was just really focusing the knocks to an area they'd worked out beforehand. I think some of it was off Mundy. They were playing off Mundy. And then they were zoning out the other mids. And they were just getting silver service, and it was inside 50 after inside 50. And they were getting some really clean delivery, and you couldn't really blame our backs for that. And then we had to work the ball from our back line most times after a goal if they didn't kick one themselves. And so we'd get like a responding goal, and then they'd just win it out of the centre and kick another one. So it was a bit frustrating to start, but it was also a bit hopeful because we'd actually been quite efficient in front of goal. We'd used our entries very well. And we took our chances when they came along. And I'm starting to see this a bit this year. We're actually taking chances when they present themselves, which is a trademark of a good side. And it's not something we've historically been very good at. So we kept ourselves in the game, and we were only 8 points down at half time. And I was sort of thinking, man, I wonder if Saints have spent a bit too many petrol tickets. They've come out really hard in this first half, but they're only led by 8 points. And they did a bit of shuffling at half time, as the coaching panel seemed to do, and we just started getting on top. We just really evened out the centre bounces. We didn't dominate them, but around the ground clearances, we were getting the ball forward, and we just started scoring in an avalanche. Like we've done a couple of times this year. It reminded me a bit of the Melbourne game where we just go in, score. And we went from 8 points behind to sort of 30 points up out of nowhere. Then we had the sort of brilliant umpiring call. So we had Stevic last week, and I thought he was brutal. So maybe he's just evened it out a bit with the non-holding the ball call. I think if you look closely, it actually hits Jordan Clark's foot. One of the Saints players picks it up. Freddie comes in, tackles him. Dan Butler gives the umpire a spray, 50-metre penalty. And not the easiest shot, but Freddie's been the Iceman this year. He's just gone, about 50, 45, 50 out. I'll just slot this after the three-quarter siren. And that just really broke the Saints, I think. They'd kicked 2 in a row at that stage, and we got that momentum-stopping goal. So that was really good. And then the final quarter, we really just held them at arm's length. Took a while for any sort of score to put on the board, but then we banged in 4 in the last quarter to make it a very nice 41-point margin for the Dockers. So I think the boys have been very good this year in terms of bouncing back. So I thought that Carlton performance was a stinker, and it's clearly sat in their minds and like, we're going to make this right. So they've come out next time and put the Saints to the sword. Wasn't the greatest first half, but I think the back line kept us in it. Brayshaw, best on ground, solid game. Thought Fife was really good. He had one shank from a set shot that was a bit further out, but his other shots, he was quite assured. Ends up with 3 goals. Very good game. Brought others into the game as well. I thought Taberner, minimal impact in terms of scoreboard. We kicked 17 goals without Taberner kicking a goal. He came up the ground and took a lot of marks and really helped our other players get to work. Darcy was rated best on ground by the champion data stats, but I thought Ryder probably got the best of him in the centre bounces, where a lot of their score came from. But outside centre bounces, the Saints couldn't really score. Alex Pearce was pulled out of the team sort of right before or in the warm-up, and Cox and Logue had to deal with Max King and Membry, and I thought they did really good. They only kicked 2 goals each, and there was absolute silver service coming out of the centre bounce, so to hold them to that is a good effort to the boys down there. Clark and Young, very good games again. I thought Banfield was pretty solid for his introduction. I think he's someone who just realised he's going to play his best every single game to keep a spot in the team the way we're going at the moment. And for the most times, he's performed. He's probably the first person I'm critical of, but he had another very solid game. Ethan Hughes, he was a bit quiet. He's a big body, put his body on the line, but he didn't really have like a high statistical game. Blake Acres is coming back from injury this week, so whether he gets another week and like plays in the waffle and comes back. Heath Chapman got through the waffle and was best on ground for Peel, so he probably comes into the team, whether that's for Nathan Wilson or do they do some sort of switch of players and they bring Hughes out and put someone else on the wing like Jordan Clark. I'm not sure there, but I'm pretty sure Chapman's in our best team, so he's going to come in for somebody. And O'Driscoll's also going to play at Peel this week, so starting to get some of those outside players back, which I think really helps our end-to-end structure. I think Aish has done a really solid job, but it's good for him to be a bit more of a floating Mr. Fix-It type guy. And I think Chapman just gives our kicking through the corridor a bit more impetus. So yeah, very solid game. Pretty happy with how the guys performed. Some of the guys that had like a down first half really picked up in that second half. And just quietly, Will Brodie, another very solid game, 29 disposals and 2 goals. If he keeps adding that to his game, so he's not... And if I was to criticise our midfield, and this is being like absolutely perfectionist, if you were to compare it with like some really good midfields in history, our midfield doesn't kick enough goals. So like Mundy, Brayshaw, Sarong, Brodie, they don't kick that many goals. And if you sort of think back to like midfield of yesteryear, you know, Barlow and Fife would sort of pop up for some goals here or there. And I think it's just because we're not like a forward 50 stoppage goal kicking team. We did get a good one this week, I think, from Schultz and maybe Fife as well. But when we had like Sanderlands and those guys, it was sort of like, you know, strategic, you know, have forward 50 stoppage and knock it to someone and generate a few goals that way. So maybe that's just something can add to our game as we sort of move forward. But it's good to see Brayshaw get another one and Brodie get a couple. And Sarong, when he does kick him at least, is goal of the year worthy. So we've got the Saints next week, and that'll be a good game. In the last couple of games, I didn't really watch these, but Port smashed GWS, sort of expected result. I heard about all Brisbane's COVID outs, but I thought their team was good enough to still beat Essendon. And really it was. They had opportunities. A few guys, sort of outside Lockie Neal, had down games. The Bombers got over them by 10 points. You know, fair play to the Bombers. They've had a fair month. I think they've won 3 out of 4. Hawks against Adelaide. So I went the upset with Adelaide, and I was kicking myself in the sort of first quarter or so. I could sort of see at Hawthorn were on top, and should have stuck for the Hawks with that one. And Carlton. It was a very weird game against West Coast. They held them scoreless. Then West Coast almost reined them in the second quarter, and then they kept them scoreless again in the last quarter. Ended up being a 60-odd point win. It was a bit of a touch-up. Sort of expected. I didn't really think West Coast had a good matchup for Mackay and Curnow. And we all know West Coast midfield's never been amazing. So the sort of expected result there, I think. But it was cagey for bits there. Sort of, you can never fully trust Carlton. So I ended up with 7 out of 9. Let me know how you went for your round. I guess the one thing I got wrong was the upset. I should have stuck with Hawthorn, and I don't think I ever would have tipped the Bombers. So I think the best I could have done was 8. it was a fairly good round for me. Pretty pumped, and I'll see you all later in the week for my preview for the next round, round 18, and how Freo's going to go against Sydney. Catch you later, everyone. Bye.